It started with a nagging feeling I couldn't shake. I was no stranger to hard work, and I knew the value of money. So when my husband came home, one evening with an unexpected grin and a story about a business deal he'd closed, something didn't sit right. He was acting different, more confident, more distant. But that wasn't the worst part. No, that would come later. A week after his business deal, I found an invoice on our kitchen counter, one I wasn't supposed to see. It was for a luxury SUV, a car that I had never mentioned or thought about buying, but the receipt made it clear he had purchased it. I knew we didn't need a new car, and I certainly hadn't authorized anything like that. As I scanned the invoice further, I saw the name of the buyer, his name, of course. But there was something else that caught my eye. This wasn't for our usual joint account. He had bought the car using our savings, our money. And the worst part? It wasn't for me. It was for her, the woman he had been hiding from me. I couldn't believe it at first. It was the ultimate betrayal. Using the money I had earned to buy a woman I didn't even know the car of her dreams. The very same car that should have been mine. My mind raced. I felt my heart pounding as I tried to process what I had just uncovered. Could this really be happening? He had always told me I was imagining things when I asked about his behavior. But this was proof. Now, I had to decide how I was going to handle it. What was I supposed to do with this new knowledge? The realization that everything I had worked for was being used to fuel his lies hit me hard. I decided to confront him, face to face, but when I arrived at his office to ask about the SUV, I was greeted by her instead. She was there, waiting. For me. From the outside, everything looked perfect. We had been together for years and life had seemed easy, comfortable. I was proud of what we'd built. We owned a home in a quiet neighborhood, had a steady income, and managed to carve out time for vacations and date nights. My husband, Jason, was always supportive, always there when I needed him. Or so I thought. We didn't live in excess, but we had what we needed. I worked long hours at my job, pushing myself to succeed so that we could live the life we wanted. Jason, too, had his own ambitions, but what really stood out was how we seemed to be in sync. We had plans for the future, ideas for growing our savings, and dreams of traveling the world together. We would always talk about how we'd spoil ourselves in the future when we had more than enough. It felt like we were in it together, and yet, despite all this, there were little moments where I felt a shift in him. Those small changes that I chose to overlook at the time. He'd become more distant, more focused on his work, and less engaged when I was around. I thought it was just stress, maybe even the pressures of trying to manage everything, but there was an undercurrent to our relationship that I refused to see. I had no idea then, but Jason's little secrets were already starting to take root. My life, which I thought was solid, was crumbling in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. As for Sarah, I considered her my closest friend. We had been through everything together, our first job, our first car, our first heartbreaks. She was the kind of friend I'd always relied on, someone who would never steer me wrong. Our friendship was strong, almost like family. She'd been a shoulder to cry on, a constant source of support. Her loyalty meant the world to me. Jason and Sarah got along too. It was always easy between them. They'd shared laughs over dinners and drinks, and I thought nothing of it. Sarah had always been a free spirit, someone who loved adventure. I admired her boldness and her ability to make life fun. She was always up for trying new things, and I often found myself seeking her, out when I needed a dose of excitement in my routine. She and Jason shared a camaraderie that I thought was nothing more than mutual respect. But, looking back, I should have seen it for what it really was. That familiarity, that easy connection between them, it was something more than what I had originally thought. And in the months leading up to the betrayal, I saw less of Sarah, but I chalked it up to her busy life. At the time, I never suspected that the cracks in my life were widening, and that Sarah would play a key role in shattering everything I held dear. It started with little things. Jason began staying late at work more often, and when he came home, he was distant. He would claim to be too tired to go out with me or spend time together, yet he was always up for going out with friends. His phone became a constant presence, something he used to leave unattended but now kept on him at all times. I tried to ignore it, rationalizing that maybe he was just stressed from work. After all, we both had demanding jobs, and I had seen him pushing himself harder than usual, but there was a nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. There were other moments, small but telling, like when he started canceling our weekend plans to run errands or meet with clients who I had never heard of. The more I tried to fill the gaps in our life, the more I realized something wasn't right. But it wasn't just Jason's behavior that started to raise my suspicion. It was Sarah's too. She started acting differently when I saw her. She was evasive when I asked about her recent trips or who she was spending her time with. One evening, when I casually asked her about a mysterious dinner she had attended, her face stiffened, and she quickly changed the subject. She never did that before. I could tell she was hiding something. And then there was that awkward moment when I saw Sarah at a store a few blocks away from our home. She was with Jason, and they were laughing together, close enough that it almost seemed intimate. It didn't sit right with me, but I brushed it off as nothing more than a coincidence. But the unease stayed with me, slowly building. The more I observed, the clearer it became that something had shifted, not just between me and Jason, but also between me and Sarah. The real turning point came when I stumbled upon a receipt in Jason's jacket pocket. It was for a private meeting at a jewelry store in the city, a store I had never been to before. At first, I thought it might be for something he had planned for me, maybe a gift. But then I noticed the date, just days before the evening I had seen him with Sarah. I felt my stomach drop as I pulled the receipt out and read the details. A $50,000 diamond ring. The name on the receipt was not mine, but Sarah's. Jason had bought her an expensive ring, using the money we had saved for our future. The same future I thought we were building together. I confronted him that evening, but he denied everything. He told me I was imagining things, that I had misunderstood the receipt. He tried to laugh it off, but his nervousness was evident. I could see it in his eyes. He was lying. That moment solidified everything. All the doubts, all the little signs, it all made sense now. Sarah wasn't just a friend. She was the reason for everything that had changed in our lives. She had taken something I worked so hard for, and I knew I couldn't just let it go. Determined to get to the bottom of the situation, I began collecting more evidence. I started paying attention to the little things Jason said. I noticed how he would mention Sarah more often, sometimes in passing, sometimes deliberately. He began to slip up, dropping small details that contradicted his earlier stories. I began keeping track of his whereabouts, checking his phone and asking around. It didn't take long before I discovered that Jason had been spending more time with Sarah, far more than he had admitted. They had been meeting at odd hours, going to places I didn't know about. Every lie he told became a piece of the puzzle I was putting together. The more I uncovered, the more disgusted I became. Sarah, the woman I had trusted as my best friend, had been a part of this betrayal from the beginning. Jason had not only disrespected me by buying her an extravagant gift, but had gone as far as to share our savings, our future, with her. I knew now that there was no turning back. I had to make him pay for what he had done to me, for the way he had betrayed not just me, but our life together. The weight of the discovery hit me like a tidal wave. Jason's betrayal, and worse, Sarah's complicity, consumed my thoughts. Every moment spent together now felt tainted. I knew I had to confront them, but first I needed to gather all the proof, every shred of evidence, to ensure there was no way they could talk their way out of this. I started watching Jason more closely. Every time he left the house, I took note. I made mental maps of his movements, tracking his every step. If he was going to lie, I wasn't going to make it easy for him. I knew that I had to take action before he had the chance to spin this situation into something else. I also started taking notes on Sarah's behavior. I wasn't sure if she'd try to cover her tracks or if she'd be more brazen. I soon found that she was texting Jason more frequently. The texts weren't long, but they were enough to confirm that she was more than just a friend. A few late-night texts caught my attention, messages that weren't about casual friendship. They were more intimate, personal, and worst of all, secretive. I found a pattern. It wasn't just the late-night texts. They had started meeting in Sichin 6 in my Places I hadn't known about. Restaurants, cafes, and parks. The more I investigated, the clearer it became. They weren't just seeing each other as friends. Jason was spending money on Sarah, money that should have been ours. And the SUV, everything clicked into place. One evening, I followed Jason as he left the house early, claiming a meeting. I knew it wasn't business. I drove behind him, keeping a safe distance. After a few turns, I saw him park at a secluded spot near a ritzy dealership. My heart raced. He wasn't alone. Sarah stepped out of a different car, smiling as she walked over to him. They hugged, laughing at something he said. They were so comfortable with each other, so in sync, it made me sick. I stayed hidden, watching from afar. What I saw confirmed everything I had suspected. Jason wasn't just guilty of buying her gifts. He was in this deeper than I had imagined. He had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The following days felt like a blur of anger, disbelief, and quiet determination. I couldn't let Jason and Sarah continue to lie to my face. I had to confront them, but before I did, I needed to dig deeper. I started going through Jason's belongings, his phone, his laptop, and the credit card statements. The more I uncovered, the more infuriating it became. Every receipt, every purchase led back to her. Jewelry stores, upscale restaurants, the SUV dealership where he had signed for the car in her name. Everything was there, in black and white, plain as day. But what hurt the most wasn't just the money he'd spent on Sarah. It was the fact that he had been living a lie right under my nose. He had been lying about where he was, what he was doing, and with whom. His excuses had always sounded weak, but I had chosen to believe them. I trusted him. How could I not? He was my husband, the man I thought I knew better than anyone. But now, with every lie I uncovered, I could see him for what he really was, a man who had taken everything I gave him and threw it all away for someone else. I confronted him that night. I had everything laid out, receipts, text messages, even photos of him and Sarah together. There was no way he could deny it now. I watched as the color drained from his face, as his cocky, dismissive attitude crumbled. He tried to explain, but his words sounded hollow. He claimed it was nothing, just business. But I wasn't fooled. The look on his face told me everything. I needed to know. He had betrayed me, and now there was no turning back. The more I questioned him, the more his lies unraveled. The SUV was a gift for Sarah, not a business purchase. He'd used our joint savings to buy it, thinking I wouldn't notice. The thought of how much he'd spent on her, on his affair, while I had been working day and night to support us, made my blood boil. But the worst part? His arrogance, his complete lack of remorse. He still thought I wouldn't catch on. He still thought he could talk his way out of it. In the days that followed, I kept digging. I wasn't about to let him off that easily. I knew he was hiding more, and I wasn't about to stop until I had the full picture. I checked his email and found even more incriminating evidence. There were flight bookings, hotel reservations, and emails confirming their weekend getaways. Jason had been flying her to exotic locations, booking luxury hotels, all on the company card I thought we were using for business trips. I felt my hands shake as I read through it. He had been living a double life for months, and I had been blind to it. One email caught my eye. It was from Sarah, and it was a thank you note for the SUV. The subject line read, "Thank you for the beautiful car, Jason." She had sent it the day after they picked it up. She didn't just appreciate the gift. She knew exactly what she was doing. This was it. The proof I needed. I now had everything I needed to bring Jason and Sarah's world crashing down. It was time. I couldn't wait any longer. I was done being the woman who didn't know, who didn't see. I was going to make Jason and Sarah face the consequences of their actions. They thought they could get away with it, but not anymore. I planned everything carefully. I didn't want to give them a chance to talk their way out of it. I invited them to dinner at a restaurant I knew they frequented, knowing they would be comfortable. They showed up together, acting as though nothing was wrong. Jason still had that smug look on his face, but that was about to change. I waited until they had ordered their food, and then I dropped the bombshell. I didn't waste time. I pulled out my phone, opened the email with the SUV details, and put it in front of them. Jason's face turned pale as he realized what I had. "You think I don't know?" I asked, my voice calm but cutting. "You think I wouldn't find out?" I watched as Jason stammered, trying to find an explanation. But there was nothing. He could lie all he wanted, but I had the receipts, the proof. Sarah didn't speak at first. She sat there, eyes wide, looking at the floor. Then, finally, she looked up, and I saw it, guilt in her eyes. It wasn't just guilt, it was fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of losing everything. I didn't care. I wasn't interested in their excuses anymore. I had planned my next move, and nothing was going to stop me from taking back what was mine. I didn't just want Jason to be exposed. I wanted him to feel the consequences of his actions. So I devised a plan. One that would not only expose him, but ensure he would never forget the betrayal he had caused. The first step was simple. I took the car. It wasn't just a luxury SUV, it was the symbol of everything Jason had stolen from me. I had worked hard for the money we had saved, and he had used it for his affair. It was time to take it back. The second part of my plan was a little more personal. I contacted his business partners, telling them about the misuse of company funds. Jason had been embezzling, using the money from the company to fund his lavish lifestyle with Sarah. His business dealings would come to light, and I knew that would hit him harder than anything. But the final part was the most satisfying. I made sure to file for divorce, and I made it public. I wanted him to know that I wasn't just walking away quietly. I was taking everything he valued. The humiliation, the financial loss, it was all part of my revenge. As I prepared for the final confrontation, there were moments of doubt. Was I doing the right thing? Was it worth it to destroy everything he had built? But then I remembered everything he had done to me. The lies, the deceit, the broken promises. I wasn't just taking revenge, I was reclaiming my life. I was taking back what I deserved. The pain of betrayal never truly leaves, but I was ready to face it. I had learned that no one could take advantage of me and get away with it. My resolve was stronger than it had ever been. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was in control. It had been days since I put my plan into motion, but the time had come for the final confrontation. Jason and Sarah thought they were safe, that their lies and secrets would remain hidden forever. But they were wrong. This wasn't just about exposing them. It was about taking back my dignity, my life, and everything they had stolen. I made sure they didn't suspect anything. I invited them both over for dinner. Jason, oblivious as ever, thought this was just another normal evening. He had no idea that his world was about to shatter in front of him. He still had that smug look on his face, confident that his charm and smooth talking could save him. But I was done playing nice. We met at a high-end restaurant, the same place they'd gone to on their weekend getaways. It was ironic, really. It was a place that had once been the symbol of our togetherness, but now it would become the stage for their downfall. Jason arrived first, his usual confident demeanor in full swing. He didn't know that tonight. I had all the power. Sarah walked in just moments after, looking uneasy, as if she could feel the tension in the air. Neither of them knew what was coming. I watched as they settled in, exchanged pleasantries, and ordered drinks. Jason still smiled like he had nothing to worry about. But I wasn't fooled. I was watching closely, observing every movement, every word. This dinner was about more than just food. It was the beginning of the end for their lies. When the waiter served our appetizers, I decided it was time. I had the evidence in front of me. I couldn't wait any longer. I placed my phone on the table between us and opened the email with the SUV details. As I slid it across to them, I didn't say a word. The truth was in front of them, in black and white. Jason's face immediately fell. His smug smile faltered, replaced with a look of pure panic. He tried to cover it up, but his eyes told a different story. Sarah, on the other hand, shifted in her seat, glancing nervously at him. I could see it. The guilt, the fear, the realization that everything they had worked so hard to hide was finally exposed. "Don't play dumb, Jason," I said, my voice steady but firm. I know about the car, the trips, the lies, everything. How long did you think I wouldn't notice? Jason opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His usual charm and arrogance had disappeared. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her chair, avoiding eye contact with both of us. The silence between us grew thick. The walls they'd built around their affair, around their deceit, were crumbling. "This isn't what you think," Jason finally said, his voice shaky. "No," I replied coldly. "It's exactly what I think. You've been lying to me for months, spending money you didn't earn, living a life you didn't deserve, and you thought I wouldn't catch on. Well, I did." I watched as the reality set in. The person he had thought he could deceive forever was no longer blinded by his lies. The truth was out, and there was no escaping it. There was no way he could talk his way out of this. The room felt colder than it ever had before. The once warm, romantic ambiance now felt suffocating. Jason's face had gone pale, his usual confidence now replaced with a desperate look. He knew the game was over, but he still tried to salvage it, to salvage himself. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, his voice weak, almost pleading. "Never meant to hurt me?" I laughed bitterly. "You bought her a $50,000 SUV with our money. You spent our savings on gifts for her while I was at home, working, taking care of everything. You took everything from me." Jason opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah cut him off. She finally looked up, her face flushed with guilt. I didn't know how to stop. It just happened. Her words felt empty, like an excuse. They were both in it together. They had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now, they were both realizing the magnitude of their actions. "You didn't know how to stop?" I repeated, shaking my head. "You think I should feel sorry for you? You knew exactly what you were doing. Both of you." Jason tried again, his voice shaky. "I was going to end it, I swear. I was planning on telling you." "No, you weren't. You never had any intention of telling me the truth. You were just waiting for the right moment to cover it up, to get away with it." My heart was racing, the anger bubbling up with every word I spoke. "But I'm done waiting. I'm done letting you lie to my face." Jason was silent now, and Sarah was looking anywhere but at me. The facade had cracked, and the truth was finally out. I didn't want to hear any more lies. There was nothing they could say that would change what I knew. "I'm not here to forgive you," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I'm here to take back what you stole." At that moment, I knew there was no turning back. My mind was made up. I had everything I needed, and the only thing left to do was to make sure Jason and Sarah faced the consequences. I turned to the waiter, who had been quietly observing the entire scene. "I'll take the check," I said. And with that, I stood up, leaving them both in the dust. The look on their faces, a mixture of shock, guilt, and fear, was all I needed. It was over. They had lost. I stood there, holding my head high, as the truth hung in the air. Jason and Sarah sat at the table, stunned into silence. It was hard to even look at them anymore. The people I had once trusted were nothing more than strangers now. Their lies had built a wall between us, a wall I was finally tearing down. "I hope it was worth it," I said, my voice low and cutting. "Because everything you've done, every lie you've told, is coming back to you." Jason looked defeated. He didn't even try to argue anymore. The man who once seemed untouchable was now reduced to a shell of his former self. He had no words left to justify his actions. All the years of trust, all the moments I had believed in him, gone in an instant. "Don't think for a second that I'm going to let you walk away from this," I continued. "You think you can just keep taking from me, keep betraying me, and nothing will happen? Not anymore." I turned to Sarah. She had been silent throughout. The entire exchange, her guilt weighing on her. "You," I said, pointing at her. "You could have backed out at any point. You could have chosen to walk away. But you didn't. You chose to betray me too. So don't think you'll get away with it." Sarah's face flushed as she looked away, her shame evident. She knew exactly what she had done, and now she was facing the consequences. Both of them were. The air was thick with the silence of a truth that had been long buried. There was no more running, no more hiding. The consequences were inevitable. I finally turned and walked away, leaving them to pick up the pieces of their lives. There was nothing left for me here, and I wasn't going to waste any more time on them. My freedom was waiting, and I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. The moment I left the restaurant, I felt a strange sense of power rushing through me. I wasn't sure if it was the rush of finally exposing the truth or just the sheer satisfaction of taking back control over my life. Either way, the weight that had been pressing down on my chest for months was suddenly lifted. As I walked away, I heard Jason's voice calling out to me from behind, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to hear him beg for forgiveness. There was no apology that could undo the damage he had done. I had seen the way he crumbled at the revelation, his once confident persona completely shattered. The next few days were a blur of emotions. But what was undeniable was the sharp, painful realization that the lives of both Jason and Sarah were now in chaos. The fallout from the dinner was swift. Jason's phone started ringing nonstop as soon as I left. I knew it wasn't just business calls. It was Sarah. He had no choice but to answer. His voice sounded strained as he tried to explain himself, but Sarah wasn't having it. I could imagine her on the other end, hurt and angry, but also realizing that their secret had been exposed. Within hours, social media had picked up on the whispers. It started with one of Jason's friends, someone who had always admired the luxurious lifestyle Jason had been flaunting. A post went up, cryptic at first, about betrayal and lies, but the truth couldn't stay hidden. As soon as I let the world know about the luxury SUV and how it had been bought with our shared savings, the online world exploded. Jason's image, built on status and appearances, began to crumble. His business reputation was now in question. Clients pulled away, and the financial stability he had enjoyed for so long began to slip away. He was no longer the charming businessman who could make anyone feel like they were on top of the world. Instead, he became a cautionary tale, the face of someone who had everything and lost it all in the blink of an eye. Sarah, on the other hand, faced her own fallout. Her friends began distancing themselves. They could no longer ignore the fact that she had knowingly participated in the betrayal. It was one thing to be a victim of someone else's lies. It was another to actively take part in it. The isolation she was facing was immediate and stark. She had no one to turn to anymore, not even Jason, who, in his desperation, started to turn on her too. Their lives were falling apart piece by piece, and it was only the beginning. I couldn't help but feel a strange satisfaction as I watched everything unravel from the sidelines. They had tried to play me for a fool, but in the end, I was the one who took control. They were now the ones left to pick up the broken pieces. When the truth was revealed, everything they had carefully built crumbled. The betrayal had far-reaching effects, more than they could ever imagine. His decision to buy her the luxury SUV with money I earned turned out to be his downfall. At first, he thought he could get away with it, but the fallout was much more severe than expected. He faced immediate consequences, socially and financially. The people who once admired him now turned their backs. His friends, who had respected him for his achievements, started questioning his integrity. Even his family was horrified when they discovered the truth. As the rumors spread, he was left with a shattered reputation. His own actions had turned everyone away from him, and it became clear that he could no longer rely on the image he had built over the years. The woman, who he thought would stand by him, quickly disappeared, leaving him alone with the weight of his actions. She wasn't there when he needed her, and as soon as she found out that he was no longer a man of value, she had no qualms about distancing herself. He went from being the center of attention to being completely isolated. It was almost as if the universe was taking back everything he had stolen. He also faced significant financial struggles. The loss of his reputation affected his job and his prospects. The car, the symbol of his indulgence, was now in my possession, and it added insult to injury. He had thrown away everything for a fleeting indulgence, and it cost him dearly. The SUV wasn't just a material object. It was a symbol of everything he had lost: his dignity, his integrity, and his financial standing. The legal battle was long and emotional, but in the end, it was worth it. I didn't just walk away with material possessions. I gained back my power and control. The moment the divorce papers were finalized, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. The car, his gift to her, was rightfully mine now. He may have bought it with my money, but it symbolized something much greater. I took back everything that was rightfully mine, everything I had worked for, everything he had taken for granted. While he sat there watching as I reclaimed the assets I had helped accumulate, I knew that his actions had made this inevitable. He had crossed a line, and now he was left with nothing but the consequences of his choices. The financial victory wasn't just about the material things. It was about finding a sense of stability, independence, and strength again. For years, I had been subjugated to his selfishness, to his disregard for my feelings. But now, I had the chance to build something of my own, to stand tall, and to no longer let his actions define me. The money, the car, the house, they were symbols of the freedom I had earned. I could finally look forward to the future without the constant weight of betrayal on my shoulders. I could have stayed silent, keeping everything I had gained to myself. But I decided to take a more public step, one that would show the world the power of reclaiming what's rightfully yours. After all, his actions were meant to show off, to flaunt his power with a luxury gift. It felt fitting to share my own power in a similar way, but this time, it wasn't about flaunting wealth. It was about showing strength and independence. One afternoon, I took a picture of myself standing proudly beside the luxury SUV, a smile on my face and confidence in my posture. I posted it on social media with a simple caption: "Sometimes you have to take what's yours, no matter who tries to take it from you." It wasn't just about the car. It was about reclaiming my dignity and showing the world that I wouldn't let him, nor anyone, walk all over me again. This small symbolic action was my final act of justice. He had thought he could steal from me, manipulate me, and walk away unscathed. But this was my way of showing that I was stronger, more resilient, and that I would walk away with dignity intact. The SUV wasn't just an asset. It was a testament to my strength and resolve, and I wanted the world to know that I had emerged victorious. In the silence that followed, I took a step back and reflected. Everything had changed so quickly, from the shock of the betrayal to the realization that I had reclaimed my life. No longer did I have to answer to anyone who didn't respect me. I had built a new life, free of the toxic influence of someone who had thought nothing of my feelings. The car, the house, the assets, they weren't just reminders of the life I had rebuilt, but symbols of the lessons learned. I had survived betrayal, and I had emerged stronger than ever. But beyond the material things, I had gained a new sense of freedom. No longer was I bound by a man who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone to his own desires. I could finally breathe. I could walk into a future without fear, without regret, and most importantly, without him. In the quiet moments after everything had settled, I smiled to myself. I had taken back what was mine, not just the car, but my freedom, my life, and my peace of mind. I knew that nothing and no one could ever take that away from me again. The betrayal hit me like a thunderclap, shaking the very foundation of everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and loyalty. When I discovered how he had used my money to buy her a luxury SUV, it was more than just an insult. It was a revelation that shattered the person I had been for so many years. But as the shock began to subside, I realized something profound. I was stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. Through the pain and heartache, I discovered the depths of my own resilience. The man I thought I knew, the one I trusted with every ounce of my being, was nothing but a facade. He had proven himself unworthy of my loyalty, and that realization stung, but it also freed me. Trust is a delicate thing. Once broken, it can never be the same again. But in breaking it, he gave me the greatest gift, the chance to rebuild my life on my terms. I learned to trust myself above all else. That was the most valuable lesson of all. the importance of self-reliance, of knowing I could stand on my own 2 feet, regardless of the betrayal. I also learned about the cost of complacency. How many times had I ignored the signs? How often had I brushed aside the small cracks in our relationship, convincing myself that everything was fine? I understand now that sometimes what we ignore in the moment will come back to haunt us. But instead of letting it destroy me, I turned it into fuel for change. Leaving him was the hardest decision I ever made, but it was also the beginning of something extraordinary. The first few weeks were difficult, filled with loneliness, anger, and self-doubt. I questioned my decisions, wondering if I had done the right thing. But the more I leaned into the discomfort, the more I realized that this was my chance to rediscover who I was outside of the relationship. I spent time focusing on myself, on my dreams, my ambitions, and the things I had put on hold for so long. I reconnected with friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I took long walks, enjoying the freedom of making decisions for myself without considering someone else's opinions. Each day brought me closer to the person I was meant to be. I started a new career path, something I had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. I enrolled in a course that reignited my passion for photography, something I had once loved but had abandoned due to the pressures of my relationship. I traveled more, embracing the world in a way I never had before. The first time I bought something for myself, something small and meaningful, I realized how far I had come. I had learned to live for me, not for anyone else. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every moment of discomfort. I didn't just rebuild my life. I transformed it into something better than I had ever imagined. In the process of rebuilding, I realized I had to let go of the past, not just emotionally, but physically. 2. The memories that had once been precious were now nothing but chains, holding me back from the future I was working so hard to create. I went through the things I had kept over the years, gifts, photos, mementos, and started sorting them. I discarded what no longer served me, kept only the things that reminded me of who I had been before I became entangled in the lies. The engagement ring I had once cherished found its way to the bottom of a drawer, far from the life I was starting anew. I packed up and moved into a new apartment, one that was all mine. It was small, but it was mine, my own sanctuary. It was a space where I could breathe freely and without fear, and that simple change became the symbolic goodbye to a chapter of my life that was now closed. Looking back, I could see how much I had grown. What had once been a time of pain and confusion was now a powerful testament to my strength and resilience. I had taken back my power and built something solid from the ashes of my betrayal. There was no more room in my life for toxic relationships or lies. I had learned to listen to my instincts, to trust myself above all else. And as I looked toward the future, I knew I was ready. Ready to love again. This time, love myself first. Ready to pursue my passions without fear of judgment. Ready to make decisions that aligned with who I truly was. The future was bright, and I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came my way, I knew I had the strength to face it, to rise above it, and to continue walking down the path I had created, one built on self-love, growth, and the freedom to be me.